Hello everyone, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. Wishing you all a pleasant listening experience. Today, I'll be discussing the book Understanding Your Partner. The original title of this book is, You Just Don't Understand, Women and Men in Conversation. The title reflects the common complaint in intimate relationships that, you just don't understand me, which frequently arises. In intimate relationships, we often feel like men and women are sometimes two completely different species, struggling to communicate with each other. Small issues can lead to arguments and resentment, while larger ones can result in breakups or divorces. This book points out that there exists a kind of gender dialect between the sexes. Men and women use different language logics. Women are often more adept at emotional communication, while men tend to excel in report-style communication. This often leads to misunderstandings in their communication. The author of this book, Deborah Tannen, is a renowned sociolinguist in the United States. To write this book, she conducted extensive research and observed the ways in which men and women think and express themselves. This book spent 8 months at the top of the New York Times bestseller list, was translated into 31 languages, and received numerous feedback. Many readers have expressed that this book, to some extent, has saved their marital relationships. For intimate relationships, you can consider this book as your communication guide with your loved one. In terms of social life, you can discover the principles behind many misunderstandings and hostilities that arise in everyday life and work. Effectively adjusting your mindset and improving your understanding of your own and others' relationships are key takeaways. So, in the next 20 minutes, I strongly recommend 2 things. First, follow along with my discussion to identify your own communication style. Second, I invite you to set aside your emotions and try to understand the communication style that may be unfamiliar to you from the perspective of the other party. I believe that after these 20 minutes, you will have a deeper insight into communication. Without further ado, let's begin. If we were to summarize the core idea of this book in one sentence, it would be that the purposes of communication and conversation between men and women are different, and this is a significant reason for communication failures between the sexes. In general, women tend to use language that emphasizes building connections. They prioritize intimacy and are skilled in emotional communication. On the other hand, men tend to use language that establishes their status. They seek independence and are often more proficient in report-style communication. Let's take a closer look. First, women excel in emotional communication. The purpose of emotional communication is to express care for others, focusing on both parties' feelings. The speaker shares their own feelings while also considering the listener's emotions. The author provides a simple way to determine your communication style. If you feel at ease when speaking privately, your communication style may lean towards emotional communication. This style is often favored by women. As the name suggests, emotional communication views conversation as a means to build emotions and harmonize relationships. It emphasizes showcasing similarities and matching experiences between both parties. Even in the most public settings, women may use this intimate form of sharing personal experiences to structure their speeches. Next, men excel in report-style communication. The purpose of report-style communication is to maintain independence and freedom. Those accustomed to this style use speech to capture others' attention. If you feel more comfortable speaking in public, your communication style likely falls into the report-style category. Report-style communication is often favored by men. For most men, in a society with a strict hierarchy, language is a tool for preserving independence, negotiating, and maintaining status. Men are more inclined to use verbal expression to showcase their knowledge and skills, often through storytelling, humor, or sharing information to become the center of attention, even in the most intimate settings. Now, the question arises, are there women who habitually use report-style communication and men who are more skilled in emotional communication? Indeed, such individuals exist, and exceptional communicators often employ both communication strategies simultaneously. For example, a male psychotherapist may lean closer to emotional communication compared to his typical communication style, earning trust quickly due to his warmth and empathy. A confident woman, particularly one in business management or public speaking, may adeptly employ the logic of report-style communication. Her words are not only persuasive but also authoritative. However, overall, there is still a noticeable tendency for men and women to have distinct speaking styles. When a man seeks to make friends and establish friendly relationships, he often focuses on whether he occupies a higher position in the group's hierarchy. Friendly relationships, for men, are often a means to greater power. In contrast, women are concerned with their position in the web of intimate connections, where friendly relationships are an end in themselves. In reality, these conversational styles are learned during childhood and adolescence through same-sex friendships. For girls, conversation is a negotiation that strengthens relationships, and they tend to avoid children who are very different from them. Boys, on the other hand, maintain their friendships through competition, be it fighting or competitive sports. When discussing certain activities, they also prefer topics with conflict, such as sports and politics. As men and women reach adulthood, these communication patterns are further solidified through their friendships with individuals of the same sex. Great! We now have a general understanding of the differences between the two communication styles. In the second part, I'll focus on explaining what report-style communication, which is more commonly adopted by men, is all about. Let's begin by exploring the advantages of report-style communication. Take, for example, a loving couple. The husband, Stuart, leans towards report-style communication, while the wife, Rebecca, is inclined towards emotional communication. In private settings, such as at home, Stuart tends to remain silent while Rebecca is the talkative one. However, in public settings, the roles reverse. Whenever they encounter situations like parent-teacher meetings or community committee meetings, it's Stuart who confidently takes the stage and speaks, while Rebecca, like an ostrich, avoids speaking. She fears that others may not like what she has to say or may find her voice unpleasant. She dislikes being judged. If she must gather the courage to speak, she needs time to organize her thoughts and wait to be called upon. She is reluctant to place herself in the spotlight, subjected to the scrutiny of others. In contrast, the previously silent Stuart can stand up and calmly express his thoughts in front of a group of strangers, using speech to attract their attention. Men are generally more comfortable with using speech to capture the attention of others. This forms the core difference between report-style communication and emotional communication. The advantages of being skilled in report-style communication are evident. It allows you to wield greater influence, whether in school, the workplace, or social activities, making you visible, reputable, and influential. Stuart is not an exception. During post-speech Q&A sessions, men are typically the first to ask questions, and they tend to speak more frequently. In private settings, men might perceive women's conversations as trivial. The fewer the listeners, the more familiar they are with each other, and the more equal the status between the speaker and the audience, the closer it resembles emotional communication. In public settings, women may feel that men tend to be boastful. This is because the more people participate in a conversation, the less familiar they are with each other, and the greater the status difference between the audience and the speaker, making the conversation lean towards report-style communication. This aligns with the way men are accustomed to speaking. Men tend to become more eloquent and verbose only in situations where they feel their status is being challenged or when they need to impress a crowd. The author posits that this observation can also explain a stereotype. Many men believe that women lack a sense of humor and rarely tell jokes. In reality, women do tell jokes, but men may not hear them because women are accustomed to private, emotional communication. They do not tell jokes to unfamiliar people. Women prefer to share jokes among themselves, a form of private humor. The act of telling a joke is, in essence, a form of self-presentation. It requires the speaker to vie for the center stage to prove their ability. This pressure is not unlike giving a public speech. Men are more accustomed to using humor as a means to establish connections by entertaining others. The one telling the joke becomes the speaker, while others are the audience. Particularly when the joke targets someone, it is a behavior that elevates the teller's status, demonstrating their knowledge and control. Making others laugh grants you temporary power, as in that moment, someone is temporarily incapacitated. Sometimes, men intentionally refrain from laughter, even when something is funny, as an act of authority and hostility. Women who are accustomed to emotional communication may be hesitant to tell jokes to men because doing so gives men an opportunity to evaluate them. If the male listener maintains a stern face during the joke, the female speaker loses face. To women, this risk does not seem worthwhile. However, if women consistently play the role of the audience and never take on the role of the joke teller, this inequality in public settings will continue to propagate, and women may increasingly find themselves unable to voice their opinions, becoming individuals who only smile, nod, and applaud. Next, let's take a look at the limitations of report-style communication. To illustrate this, consider an example. Martha bought a computer and sought guidance from a male store clerk who made her feel like the most incompetent person in the world. The male clerk used various technical terms to explain things, which forced Martha to pause and ask about the meanings of these terms. These questions made her feel inadequate, and the male clerk's responses seemed impatient. It appeared as though he was continuously emphasizing a message: I am an expert, I am intelligent, you don't understand, you're unintelligent, you're inferior. Predictably, Martha left the store feeling overwhelmed by this interaction, and the male clerk failed to effectively convey how to use the computer. This male store clerk clearly exemplifies someone who is accustomed to report-style communication. He uses speech to present himself as someone with more information, knowledge, or skills, positioning himself as the dominant party. However, in a customer service context, this approach is foolish and lacks professionalism. As an academic expert, the author, Tannen, also mentions her experience in academic exchanges. She noticed that male students often posed challenging questions, believing that challenging an expert was natural. They used questioning to undermine the expert's authority. Tannen noted that while such questioning and challenges can express a form of respect and sometimes contribute positively to academic discourse, when she felt personally challenged or attacked, she did not want to respond. She refused to engage in this academic combat. Tannen's experience serves as a wake-up call for those who solely rely on report-style communication. Sometimes, respect and disdain can appear very similar. Sometimes, no one wants to argue with a person not because they respect them, but because they dislike or fear them. In intimate relationships, women, who are often more adept at expressing themselves, may interpret men's report-style communication as a lack of understanding. This can lead to men having less influence in communication within intimate relationships. Tannen's advice is that when you encounter someone who prefers emotional communication, you should understand that when they share the details of their life, even past pains, it's their way of trying to be friendly towards you. What you need to do is quite simple: look at them, listen attentively, and apply your empathy. Actively seek common ground. Do not rush to instruct them. Now, let's touch upon a point mentioned earlier: paying attention to the other person. Why do men need to pay extra attention to this? It's because men often instinctively interpret an encounter as hostility or with sexual undertones. Compared to women in conversations, men tend to look away, appearing less engaged. However, this may be a male strategy to avoid awkwardness. Men's engagement is more likely to manifest in physical actions than in eye contact. Men prefer to do similar actions at the same time as those they like, much like two swans grooming themselves, seemingly ignoring each other but actually following the rhythm of each other's movements to convey, "We are friends." That concludes the discussion on report-style communication. Now let's take a closer look at emotional communication. First, let's understand the advantages of emotional communication. Emotional communication is not limited to interactions between friends and family. It can also be the best approach for one-on-one communication between strangers. Remember Martha's story about buying a computer? Martha bought a computer, and the male store clerk who guided her either intentionally or unintentionally placed himself in a dominant position over her. This made Martha feel like the most incompetent person in the world. Fortunately, the story didn't end there. A few days later, Martha mustered the courage to return to the store for help. This time, a female store clerk assisted her with her issue. The female store clerk was very friendly and avoided using technical jargon. Whenever technical terms did come up, she immediately explained them in the simplest and clearest language, ensuring that Martha could keep up. This female store clerk might have been a professional service provider, but it's also possible that her communication habits, developed over many years, motivated her to minimize the gap in professional knowledge and skills between herself and others. She aimed to make herself understood by others to the greatest extent possible. The message she conveyed was, "I support you," rather than, "I look down on you." For those accustomed to emotional communication, the purpose of a conversation is to maintain similarity between people. Explaining knowledge helps balance the scores between both parties. When they realize they've helped someone and when the community and the people around them become stronger, they feel more powerful and content. Emotional communication believes that conversations are meant to establish emotional and coordinated relationships. The focus of a conversation is to showcase similarities between the parties and match their experiences. Consequently, women often play a core role in maintaining an extended family. Now, let's explore the drawbacks of emotional communication. Emotional communication can sometimes impose a heavy emotional burden on others. For instance, men in romantic relationships can feel tormented because their girlfriends talk too much. They feel that their fleeting thoughts are meaningless, just like anyone else's. In the early stages of a relationship, the girlfriend might express fear and anxiety. She may not know if she can trust her partner or whether this relationship is right for her, among other concerns. However, the male partner may feel that his girlfriend is talking too much. He thinks she should keep these doubts to herself and wait to see how things unfold. They are getting along just fine, but he's left with a lasting impression. To accommodate his girlfriend's concerns, he constantly explains and proves himself. He likens himself to a yo-yo bound to his own consciousness, jumping back and forth. He believes that his girlfriend's casual sharing of her fleeting thoughts permanently damages their relationship. For women who constantly share their thoughts, it's crucial to realize that they may underestimate the impact of their words on their partners. Men are not invulnerable, they can also be hurt by women's words. Sometimes, men's apparent numbness and indifference in communication may result from women using highly emotional language to oppress them. By the way, I just realized that this particular case is quite memorable because the male partner was actually using emotional communication, a style he was unaccustomed to express his pain. This is relatively rare in male expression. Finally, the author, Tannen, offers some advice to individuals who prefer emotional communication. As a woman, Tannen believes that the key to change lies with women themselves. There has been ongoing criticism in the media that in male-dominated meetings at work, women's contributions are not given due attention. However, Tannen suggests that men may be innocent in this regard. The main reason is that the workplace is a setting conducive to report-style communication, naturally favoring men. However, she advocates that both men and women, whether more inclined toward emotional or report-style communication, can confidently speak up without waiting for an invitation. It's not necessary to adhere to certain etiquette rules. Women can also boldly interrupt others during conversations. But the adjustment shouldn't be one-sided. Men should also understand that in the corporate world, women may be communicating in a style they're not accustomed to. This is not an easy task, as we tend to believe there's only one correct way of doing things. In reality, both communication styles have their limitations and advantages. The key is for both parties in a conversation to attempt to understand each other instead of measuring each other's behavior against their own standards. Alright, the essence of this book has been explained up to this point. The benefits of being proficient in report-style communication include gaining greater influence, whether in school, the workplace, or social activities. It allows you to be noticed quickly, gaining prestige and influence. The downside is that in one-on-one private communication, report-style communication may come across as cold or overly assertive, lacking friendliness. For those skilled in report-style communication, it's important to enhance empathy, respond appropriately to the other person's topics, and find common ground. On the other hand, the advantages of being proficient in emotional communication are that groups and individuals often provide significant support. You can receive more help and also help more people. However, the downside is that emotional communication may make you overly focused on feelings, which can be emotionally draining for you and those around you, ultimately harming everyone's feelings. For those skilled in emotional communication, the most important thing is to increase their influence within a group, enhance their speaking rights, and be willing to express differing opinions. Through this book, we can understand that while communication may seem complex, it's not difficult to comprehend, and it's worth our effort to understand it. Every seemingly incomprehensible behavior and communication pattern has a logical explanation behind it. We can use communication to foster understanding among ourselves, unite more people, and make the world a better place. Lastly, I'd like to share with you one of the most inspiring insights from the book. Tannen believes that, from a communication perspective, the concept of home has different meanings for men and women. For many men, home means they no longer need to use words to assert their rights, it's finally a place where no one demands them to speak. They have the freedom of silence. But for many women, home is a place where they can speak freely with loved ones. The comfort of home lies in their ability to speak without fear of judgment. Let's start with those around us. Based on this definition, how can you make your family feel more comfortable and happier? Feel free to discuss in the comments. That concludes the essence of this book. Congratulations on finishing another book. Thank you for listening to the Tim Booker channel. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom with practice to achieve our financial goals and create a better future. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.